So, picture this. You're just standing in your kitchen, right? And you are waiting for the kettle to boil.
Yeah, just a normal quiet moment.
Right. Or like maybe you're sitting at a red light that just turned. Or you're stuck in a checkout line behind someone who decided to pay entirely an exact
Oh,
change.
we all know that feeling.
Yeah. But think about what actually happens in your body in those exact moments.
Hmm.
Because within about 4 seconds of that stillness, your hand is already moving toward your pocket.
It really is like a reflex.
Exactly. You haven't consciously made the choice to do it, but your fingers are already reaching for your phone. And today, I really want to talk about this. Why that tiny 4-second gap has become literally unbearable for so many of us. We are looking at a lot of ideas around how the mind works, our daily habits, to just understand how we lost this natural thing, this like boredom muscle, and how we can maybe get it back.
It is such an important thing to look at. And I think if you were listening to this and realizing you check your screen well over 100 times a day, often for no logical reason at all.
Which is most of us. I mean, let's be honest.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But you need to know you are not broken. You weren't failing. Your mind is simply doing what it has been relentlessly trained to do. The physical world around you just stops giving you input for a few seconds, and the brain immediately sends out this little distress signal demanding its usual feed.
So to fix that phantom pocket reach, we have to look under the hood at the invisible machinery driving it, right? Because we know there's a chemical reward system playing a part here, a little hit of excitement. But it isn't actually about feeling happy or satisfied, is it? It's almost entirely about the looking forward part, the expectation.
Yes, the expectation is the whole engine. It's the thrill of the unknown. This is the exact same mental loop that makes a slot machine so hard to walk away from.
Pulling the lever.
Exactly. When you pull down a screen to refresh a feed, you are pulling a lever. You literally don't know if you're going to get a boring work note, a scary news headline, or a really funny video. And because the reward is unknown, the mind's reward system spikes dramatically just in the anticipation of it. It keeps the whole body relentlessly hooked on the act of checking.
It makes me think about like turning up the volume on a speaker. If you turn up the dial just a tiny fraction every single day for years, eventually a normal talking voice is going to sound like a whisper to you.
That is a perfect way to picture it.
Right, like your hearing didn't physically break, but your reference point for what normal volume is just completely moved.
Yes. And naturally, when you constantly flood the mind with so much noise and fast input, the brain attempts to protect itself from being totally flooded. It literally turns down its own volume. It becomes less sensitive to those little reward signals.
So it's protecting us in a way.
It is. But because of that natural defense, normal reality,
Yeah.
the red light, the boiling kettle, the quiet room, it suddenly feels painfully empty. Boredom, in this sense, is not just the lack of things to do. It is your mind feeling a severe gap between the extreme noise it expects and the quiet truth of the real world.
Oh, wow. So it's a gap, which actually explains those hidden signs of a weak boredom muscle we hear about so often, because people aren't just struggling with a long drive, they're dealing with a shrinking focus for reading or an inability to follow a single deep thought. And maybe most weirdly, a lingering sense of mental fatigue on days when they physically did very little.
Yes, that heavy tiredness. I hear about that from people all the time.
Why does that happen? Because I feel that too, just feeling so drained on a Sunday when I did nothing.
Well, the fatigue happens because the mind is constantly revving the engine in neutral. It is scanning the room, scanning the world for a quick hit of excitement that physical reality simply isn't offering.
Just burning gas for no reason.
Exactly. Burning fuel without moving forward.
But let me challenge this a bit from the perspective of how a lot of us actually live our days. Because after a really long day of making tough choices at work, sitting on the couch and just mindlessly scrolling feels like the only way I can actually relax. I mean, it genuinely feels like resting.
It does feel that way. The feeling of physical stillness tricks us into believing we are resting. But mentally, passive scrolling is highly active work.
It is.
Very much so. When you scroll, your mind is making tiny choices at lightning speed. Do I like this? Do I agree with this? Should I read the replies? You are turning on all the active problem-solving parts of the brain. You are triggering that expectation loop over and over. Your body might be flat on the couch, but your mind is sprinting on a treadmill.
Wow. Sprinting on a treadmill. I never thought of it like that.
True, deep mental rest generally requires the absence of all that new input.
Okay, so if true rest requires us to shut off the input, then our total fear of stillness becomes this really wild puzzle. Because I heard about this setup, like a test that perfectly shows the sphere. People were placed in a completely bare room, no phones, no books, no windows, nothing. They were just asked to sit with their own thoughts for 15 minutes.
Just 15 minutes.
Right. But there was a catch. They had a button they could press that would deliver a mild shock to their ankle.
A literal physical zap.
A physical zap. And a huge number of the people chose to physically shock themselves rather than endure a quarter of an hour alone in their own heads. Like the pain of the quiet was so sharp that they preferred physical pain over having nothing to look at.
That is just so telling, isn't it? The reason sitting in that room is so tough is because they are feeling a mild withdrawal. The mind, which has turned down its own volume, is just screaming for something to do. But when we treat that withdrawal like a fire we have to put out right away, when we shock ourselves or reach for the screen, we are actively turning off the mind's quiet background space.
The background space. Let's dig into that because this seems to be the hidden cost of our constant swiping. What happens in that background space?
Well, when you are actively doing a task like reading a work note or watching a clip, your mind's active, focused parts are in control. They need direct outside input. But when you stop forcing things into the system, when you let your mind wander while washing the dishes or just looking out a window, the active parts power down and the quiet background space powers up.
Like a shift in energy.
Yes. Mechanically, the brain isn't shutting off at all. It is routing the power inward. It begins searching through your vast memory files. It takes a piece of something you learned yesterday and literally connects it to a memory from 3 years ago.
So it's just connecting the dots.
It is the natural process of connecting the dots. People who study the mind link this quiet background state directly to creative leaps, to feeling for others, and to deep problem solving. This is the exact reason why your most brilliant ideas tend to hit you in the shower.
Because you literally can't bring your phone in the shower.
Right. You finally stopped giving the brain new things to chew on, so it had the space to put together the pieces it was already holding. By treating boredom as a threat, we are just routinely robbing our minds of the exact space they need to do their most brilliant, complex work.
We are swiping away our own background processing time. That's almost scary to think about.
It's a huge loss.
And while this natural response happens to all of us, it's interesting how the pressures of life make this even harder depending on where you are in life. Like if we look at younger people, folks in their 20s, the natural need for excitement hits right at the time when they're trying to figure out who they are.
That identity phase.
Yeah, and they are doing it in a world of constant, perfect comparisons. The screen acts as this funhouse mirror that just constantly moves the bar for what a normal or good life even looks like.
The outside pressure just throws gas on the fire of that natural vulnerability. It makes the need to check the screen feel like a matter of survival.
But the age group that really stands out to me is the late 20s to early 30s. Because in this window, career demands, serious relationships, money stress, it all tends to peak at the exact same time. And here, the weakened boredom muscle shows up as this deep, heavy feeling of being stuck. It's like a brutal crash between putting things off and needing everything to be perfect.
That feeling of being stuck is so common. Let's look at how that actually works. When you are in that late 20s or 30s phase, you are often facing tasks with high stakes and high friction, like trying to buy a house, changing your career, or having a really tough talk with a partner.
Things that take a lot of mental heavy lifting.
Exactly. These tasks require a huge amount of starting energy. But if your mental reward system is totally drained from constant cheap excitement, you literally lack the natural fuel needed to push past the friction of starting. The hard task just feels like too tall of a mountain to climb.
It feels like a physical wall. So to soothe the panic of not starting the hard thing, you reach for the phone.
Which gives you a cheap, quick hit of relief. It temporarily calms the panic, but it further drains your energy, making the hard task seem even more impossible when you finally look back up from the screen. It is a loop of hiding from life that feeds on itself.
That is so relatable, just hiding from the heavy thing. But then moving into the mid-30s and 40s, the struggle kind of shifts again. People in this bracket often start to just identify with their damaged focus. They adopt this mindset of, like, well, this is just how my mind works now. I simply cannot read a book anymore.
Which breaks my heart, really, because they mistake a temporary shift in their habits for a permanent flaw in who they are. And for folks a bit older, there's often this quiet, hidden fear that the damage is forever, that it is too late to change how their mind works. But the beauty of the mind completely proves this wrong.
It's never too late.
Never. The mind keeps its ability to heal, to form new paths and connections until the very end of life. If you remove the constant flood of cheap noise, the brain will naturally turn its volume back to normal. It will heal itself to find a slower pace deeply rewarding, whether you are 25 or 65.
That is incredibly hopeful. But, I mean, we really can't ignore the social pressure making all of this so much harder. In modern work culture, being always on, like, replying to a work chat while you're in the grocery line or answering emails on a Sunday afternoon, it's quietly become this badge of honor, a sign of being dedicated. The instinct to fill every empty second with digital noise isn't just a personal failing, it's something we are literally praised and paid to keep doing.
That's the real trap, isn't it? We're living in systems that reward us for never being fully away.
So if you're listening, just think about your own daily habits for a second. Think about the daily friction points that keep your mind in a state of high alert. Like, are you drinking massive amounts of coffee just to push through the tiredness, which creates a crash that makes sitting still physically uncomfortable?
Ooh, the coffee crash is a big one.
Right. Or are you playing audio shows during every single errand, making sure your mind never hears a moment of true silence? Because if you are, you're keeping the baseline artificially high.
But again, this is a very natural response to the world we live in.
Yeah.
The real secret is understanding what actually happens to you when you gently force a break in the cycle and just sit through the messy part.
The messy part. Yeah, because there are some real stories of people doing exactly this. Like, there's this story of a woman, let's say she's around 30, working in a busy job, and she was someone who simply couldn't watch a 2-hour movie without checking her screen like 10 times. She fully believed her brain was just forever wired to be scattered.
I meet so many people who feel exactly like that.
Right. But then she gets stuck on a 4-hour train ride for a trip, and her battery completely dies.
No charger, no backup screen at all. A forced detox.
A forced detox. And her first reaction was intensely physical. She described this tight, heavy feeling in her chest, her heart racing, and this overwhelming need to move. She was trapped in her seat, feeling the absolute peak of that missing reward signal.
Because the active parts of her mind were desperately searching for something new to chew on. And finding nothing, it triggers a mild stress response in the body. It feels like an emergency.
An emergency, yes. But she just had to sit there. And around the second hour, the physical panic broke, the wave peaked, and then it just washed away. She found herself just staring out the window, looking at the trees going by, letting her thoughts drift without trying to steer them. And in that wandering state, she suddenly saw the answer to a work problem she had been completely stuck on for a whole month.
Oh, that is amazing. That is the precise moment the quiet background space came fully online. The internal noise finally settled down enough for her mind to open its own files, pull the scattered pieces of that project together, and just hand the answer right to her.
She said that the version of her mind she felt on the second half of that ride felt sharper and calmer than she had felt in years, just from one train ride. And a similar thing happened to another guy, let's call him Michael, in his mid-40s. He was a guy who tried to make every second count. Every drive, every lunch break, every walk from his car to the store was filled with a business book or some heavy audio.
Always trying to fix things, always pushing for maximum input, thinking that's what growth means.
Right, exactly. Until a health scare forced his doctor to tell him he had to take daily walks with zero input. No earphones, no screen, just walking. And he said those first few walks were just pure agony. His mind was loud, racing to fill the empty space, making up fake worries just to give itself something to do.
When you take away the outside noise, you are suddenly face to face with all the hidden thoughts and feelings you've been running from. It is naturally very uncomfortable.
But he kept doing it. He kept showing up for the walks. And by the third week, the mental static actually began to clear. His thoughts had room to settle and sort themselves out. He noticed he was sleeping so much better. By just walking in the quiet, he proved to his own mind that empty space was not a danger. He found his natural baseline again.
He rebuilt the muscle, just step by step. Which brings us to the really helpful part. How anyone listening can start this process for themselves right now.
Exactly, because you don't have to wait for your phone to die on a train to get this back. There are these really gentle, everyday shifts you can make to start turning the volume down. And the easiest one is the 60-second pause. When you feel that automatic, totally mindless pull to reach for your screen, say, at a red light, just wait 60 seconds. You aren't telling yourself you can't have it. You are simply placing a tiny wedge of time between the craving and the action.
The beauty of that little 60-second wedge is that it gives you a chance to just watch yourself. You step outside the habit long enough to notice your own craving. And so often, you will find that the intense need to check the screen peaks and then naturally fades away before the minute is even over.
It just floats away. Another really great shift is testing yourself when you're in a line. Instead of instantly swiping when you are trapped in a waiting room or a line at the store, just try to ground yourself in the room. Force your focus outward into the physical space. Try to name 5 things you can clearly see, 4 distinct sounds you can hear, 3 textures you can physically touch.
Grounding yourself like that interrupts the whole expectation loop. It tells the brain that the real physical space around you has valid things to notice. It helps retrain your focus to tolerate a much slower, real-world pace.
I love that. And there's also the one meal rule, just committing to eating one single meal a day with no screens around at all. Focus on the actual texture and taste of the food. It sounds almost too simple, but it aggressively challenges the mind's demand for high-speed noise during boring daily routines.
We can also pair those personal habits with a change to our space, like doing a real audit of what tries to grab your attention. I heard about a nurse who felt completely exhausted during his work breaks because he spent the whole time reacting to group chats and breaking news. He finally went into his phone and turned off every single alert that wasn't a direct message from a real human being.
Because every ping is deeply designed to steal your focus. When he turned those off, he stopped reaching for the device by default, and his breaks actually gave him real mental rest.
It is entirely about removing the fake sense of emergency, which ties directly into this idea of a transition buffer. When you finish one task like sending a stressful work note, and before you begin the next one like joining a video call, just sit still for 10 seconds. Don't open a new page. Don't check your messages. Just breathe for 10 seconds.
Just clear the air. It teaches the mind that the empty space between things doesn't need a quick hit of noise to be survivable. And we have to set up our homes to support this too, right? Like plug the charger in the kitchen, not right next to your pillow. Make one physical spot in your house, maybe a specific chair or a corner of the porch where screens are completely banned. You are giving your mind a clear physical sign that when you sit there, it is safe to turn off the busy engine.
When you look at all these little shifts, the deep truth of it is so clear. The struggle to sit still is not a flaw in your character. You are not lazy, and your mind is not broken. The ability to handle a quiet moment is just a muscle. If you put a physical muscle in a cast for 10 years, which is exactly what constant screen time does to our focus, it will naturally shrink. The messy, hard feeling you get when you first try to sit in the quiet is not a sign that you are failing. It is the literal feeling of that weak muscle finally bearing weight again.
We just have to give ourselves the grace to sit through that awkward part. Boredom isn't a failure. It is a natural request from your mind for a deeper kind of living. By guarding our quiet time, by bravely allowing ourselves to be understimulated, we aren't losing our edge or our drive. We are building the exact space needed for that background mind to shine. We're giving ourselves the room to feel complex things, to store our memories, and to invent answers we could never see through all the static. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought to just carry with you today. If the human mind physically needs the mild, sometimes annoying friction of boredom to put together its most brilliant and beautiful ideas, you really have to wonder, what world-changing concepts, what amazing creative leaps, or even just quiet, beautiful truths about your own life are you accidentally swiping away forever, simply because you couldn't endure 90 seconds of waiting for a red light to change?
These thoughts, these questions, they don't have to stop here. Geeks Mindset has many more podcasts and videos just like this one. Subscribe to the channel and explore other episodes. They all flow the same thoughtful way. If this podcast felt genuinely useful to you, kabang, share it with even one person in your life. That one share can bring a real change in someone's life. And it helps Geeks Mindset reach more people who truly need this. If this brought you real value, look for the join button right next to the Geeks Mindset logo below this video. Click it and become a member of the Mindset Support Circle. Your support helps honest mindset awareness reach thousands who are silently struggling. Geeks Mindset moves forward because of you. Thank you so much from the heart for being here.